Hey guys, here I am today to bring you my report from Niagara, the Treasure Cup in Niagara, where I placed 21st. I ended up going 7-2, so I just bubbled. I basically was one game away from making it to top cut, getting into top 16. So I would say that the result of my performance was definitely my misplays as a player. I think if I improve my skill, specifically, I was 7-0 at one point, so I think I definitely was making good decisions. I was playing as well as I could have throughout the majority of the event, but I think my stamina was kind of dwindling around round 8. In round 8, I did make a lot of very severe misplays, misjudgments of the board. I definitely need to be improving my own personal skill as a kind of a competitor in those types of environments. But I think the deck that I brought was actually extremely strong. I felt like I was actually in control in my eighth round game for the majority of it. And I think that it was until I was starting to make misplays that I really started to falter. So I'm actually going to be here to bring you the deck that I brought to Treasure Cup and explain to you why I think it was an extremely strong choice on my part. There are a few considerations that you want to keep in mind from apart from this from my previous deck profiles. First of all, other deck profiles I did were with the intention of playing at locals, so they are competitively tweaked, but they are intended to be playing in environments where there's going to be more variety in terms of what locals you find, right? Their intention is to get winner cards, not necessarily win event prizes such as the Tony Chopper, which I got for getting 21st. Top 64 gets the Chopper, very close to the Usopp, pretty close to the Serial Luffy and the Zoro, I guess, by proxy. But here we go. We're just going to start it off. So the idea of this deck, as opposed to my other kid builds, was to be as consistent as possible. So this so far doesn't have a huge difference from most of my lists. I'm running 4 Bonnie, 3 Momo. Bonnie is going to be finding you the majority of the strong engine pieces in your deck, and Momo is going to be finding a lot of the Wano cards that are going to be providing support and resting and finding card advantage. So you're going to be seeing some different card choices in this list than I have previously, because the intention is to be playing in a very consistent environment against specific matchups, right? So in the Treasure Cup, my intention was to fight against a lot of green mirrors. I wanted to play against red. I wanted to play against some purple. I was not expecting that much blue, not much blurple, right? I'm not expecting a lot of weird combinations, because I think a lot of people in this environment are attempting to give themselves the best chance possible. So even though those decks definitely existed at the Treasure Cup, my expectation was not to run into them that much. But this is just the standard core part of the list. We have four Momo. I'm sorry, 3 Bonnie, 4 Bonnie, 3 Momo. We have of course, the normal chump blockers. We are running 4 Capone, 4 Killer. Great cards all around, just easy chump blockers. They're the cheapest options. Killer obviously has that extra card advantage bump, where if you have 3 cards on the board, you can just give him a Dawn, and when he blocks, you just draw an extra. Pretty good. And use a 1k counter. Just the core defense of the deck. We are playing 4 Apu for our 2k counters. There were some lists playing Beppo. I think if you can shave off some cards in your list, you definitely could be playing Beppo as a pretty reasonable card. I personally, with the choices I made, did not really have too much room for extra spare 2k counters, but we do run Apu over the Beppo because Apu is searchable by Bonnie. So next up, we have our Wano engine. We have 4 Neko Mamushi. We are running 4 Izo. We're only down to 3 Okiku now, and we're also adding in 3 Raizo. So the thing about Raizo, I know a lot of people have mentioned, they're interested in my reasoning as to why I play Raizo or not play Raizo. It's just because Raizo, as a card, he bumps up your consistency, gives you card advantage, etc., etc. In locals environments, I think that's fine, but I don't necessarily think that's mandatory. I think for an event like Treasure Cup, though, seeing a card like Raizo is very useful because he lets you see more cards in your deck, as well as, build advantage. And so I found that the Raizo was probably a good choice going into it. He kind of he kind of tightens your versatility. Your deck is not going to be as versatile, but it will be a lot more consistent given your strategy. The Okiku we have to drop down to 3 because if we're playing Raizos on curve, we're going to have to be dropping down the 3 cost in our deck. And I think that a lot of people are prepared with counterplays around Okiku. A lot of people are using their spot removal on Okiku. A lot of people are prioritizing killing Okiku. And so it just made sense to me that if I'm going to be adding more 3 costs, the one to drop would be the Okiku. We need to keep the form Nekomamushi in here because this card in the mirror match is invaluable. If you are in a position where the opponent played their Okiku turn 2 on their 3-Don turn and you're on your 4-Don turn, you want to use Nekomamushi and then attach 2 to swing 7 at the Okiku to make them burn multiple cards to either save the Okiku or to successfully kill it because it will apply massive pressure in the mid game. So you definitely want to be keeping 4 Neko if you're anticipating to play a lot of green. Izo obviously is just a more expensive Neko, but it is a 2k counter, so obviously if we have that, it's useful defensively and offensively, so we're playing for Izo, and that's the hefty Wano engine that we are playing in this deck today. Next up, we have our staple 5 costs, so we have 3 Basil Hawkins. I think this card is extremely strong in the mirror, extremely strong in pretty much every matchup, to be honest. He's pretty good in pretty much every matchup. The only one that he might be a little scary to play in is purple, but if you know that they're not going to have their non-down turn next turn, then the Basil Hawkins is a pretty easy thing to commit to. You can swing at kings, force them to lose cards for that they don't want to lose because they want to save it for their life, because you're trying to play very aggro into this purple matchup specifically. But I would say that this deck is trying to play control against pretty much every other matchup except for maybe the mirror, in which mid-range might be kind of the more effective option. But in the mirror, you might end up going to control anyway because that's just how they're trying to do the same thing to you effectively. But Basil Hawkins swings twice, very strong. I think at 4 this card could be useful as well, but I'm running quite a few non-counters in the deck, including 3 Trafalgar Law. I am playing this build to be more control oriented, so I wanted to have some more blockers, especially when you're a 5 cost blocker. It's really difficult in this current metagame to really force the 5 cost blocker to kind of get spot removal. There's not too many things that rest it. The only one really being Okiku, who can be dealt with by other means. There's like 9 cost Kaido, which pretty big commitment if they go for that. And it's just, I wanted to have a lot of blockers. As a result, I didn't have much counter, so I wanted to just keep the Hawkins at 3. But he is an extremely important card to see. Next up, we are playing 2x Drake. The reason you might have noticed that I'm no longer playing the 3 cost killer. The killer is a little bit sacky. He swings the tide of the game, right? If you hit him off trigger at the perfect time, but you don't always hit him off trigger at the perfect time, right? And so if you don't expect him to be the trigger, especially because I only was running 2 previously, I wanted to make it more efficient because killer is a 3 cost 3k power card with a 1k counter. You basically by playing X Drake, you're spending 5, so you're spending 2 more, but you're getting 3k more power on the stat line. And that's basically what you're giving up for the trigger. You can also hit 4 costs with him, which is, that might come up. It doesn't really come up too much, but it can be relevant, I suppose. I think my X Drake did hit a 4 cost. I think it was the promo law from the Uta pack. So that came up where it was better than killer. But for the most part, one of the bigger reasons that I want to make sure to be playing at least a killer or Drake or something like that is just for the extra counter. Obviously we're not playing Beppo. Having more 1k counters is really important, which is part of the reason why I chose to play kind of a weird ratio. So next up we have, I mentioned that I wanted the deck to be as consistent as possible, but we are playing 2 one-ofs. The 2 one-ofs being the 7-drop Useless Captain Kid and the 5-drop Yamato. So the reason I'm playing the 1-in-1 like this is because I wanted good options going into purple that I could find off of both Momo and Bonnie, but at the same time, I think the 7-drop Kid could have made more sense to have it too. So I think if you wanted to drop the Yamato, I would add a 7-drop Kid, but I felt kind of uncomfortable trading. I felt kind of uncomfortable with how much counter was in my deck because I kind of wanted to play a deck with a lot more counter because I'm focusing a lot more on control. I wanted a little bit more defense for my 8-drop kid. And so I decided instead of playing 2 7 costs, I was going to compromise a little bit and play 1 7 cost, 1 Yamato. So, like I said, this could have been 2 7 cost. I think that makes perfect sense. But I just really wanted the extra counter. So we're going that for that ratio. Both of them are really strong in the purple. This is good into the green mirror. It's pretty good into like most matchups, honestly, except for blue. But not really worried about blue too much in this metagame. Yamato, it can be good into red, and it's good into purple. And other than that, it's kind of like whatever. But at the end of the day, searchable 1K counter. And as for the last big boy in the deck, we got Eustace Captain Kidd. This deck is basically designed to protect the castle, the kid right here. You might say, like, why don't you want to play 4 of him? The reason was because I'm on the 7 cost kid, because he's better in certain matchups such as purple. So I was like, if I have 4 of the big drops, you know, that's good enough for me. I'll play that. But basically the idea of this deck is you want to have the kid, you want to have like maybe like a Raizo or like a Bonnie or something like that to gain you advantage every turn so that your hand depletes extremely slowly after defending turn after turn after turn. And you kind of just want to turbo out like stuff like blockers. So the board that you're aiming for, like this is like near ideal. A board like this would be like near ideal, where the Bonnie's getting you cards every turn, the Rise is getting you an extra card every turn. So you're drawing, you're getting Rise, you're getting Bonnie, you're getting 3 cards every turn, and then you have blockers for the tall swings, and then you'd have like, you'd end up with like a 10 trillion card hand is basically the thesis of this deck. You're trying to get to the 8 cost kid, and you're trying to take the hits as much as possible, so you'll be on like 0 or 1 life when you finally decide to commit and swing. Start swinging with the 8 cost kids, because when he's defending, you know, you'll be able, the idea is you want to defend him as much as possible, right? And so in order to help accomplish that, you need a lot of counter in the deck. And so what I've done is I've opted to play 4 Punk Gibson. It's honestly extremely strong. If I had to give my title of MVP card for the entire event this whole weekend, I genuinely believe it's literally just Punk Gibson. In terms of what I've built my strategy to do in terms of protecting the 8 cost kid, having 2 Punk Gibsons in hand, having 3 Punk Gibsons in hand, it seems like pretty bricky. Like you would think like, I'm not going to save 6 Dawn every turn, but you don't need to save 6 Dawn every turn. You can save 2 or 4 Dawn every turn and then just leave the last one dead. And then when you use them that turn, you can just do the same thing again next turn. Right, and the trigger is also really strong, so when you're running 4 of these, you can start expecting the trigger a lot more frequently, where it just is rest any of my opponent's characters, which is pretty incredible. It's definitely helped me close a couple of games at Treasure Cup, so it was fantastic. I would say this was like the best performing card in my deck, honestly, which is, that's silly to say about a counter event, but I mean really the best performing card in my deck is obviously the 8-drop kid. But the 8-drop kid wouldn't be anything if I wasn't on 4 Punk Gibson. So, but yeah, the idea of the deck is to just play control, just kind of kill the opponent, you know, through just sheer card advantage, overwhelm them with your card advantage, tax their Dawn every turn by forcing them to swing at like minimum 8 every single turn, probably 10. And you have tons of ways to defend it, and you have tons of ways to kind of control their board in the mid game with the Wano cards so that you can set yourself up to drop the 8-drop on curve, not do anything for him, take like 3 hits, just build up your hand, and then you're at your perfect board state. And so, like I said, in terms of the matchups that I personally ended up playing, I actually played against 0 purple, which was surprising but very welcome. But my rounds were, I played against Luffy, I played against I believe my round 1 was a Luffy, round 2 I think was a green mirror. My round 3, I believe, was Law. Round 4 was... My round 4 was actually another Law player. My round 5 was against green. My round 6 was against, I think, green again. And then my round 7 was Zoro. My round 8 was green, and my round 9 was green. So for the most part, playing a lot of green, exactly what I anticipated. I was doing extremely well. The last 2 green mirrors I played, I did lose, But again, that was kind of predicated on my own misplays, not what I believe my deck was capable of. I would say in the ninth round, I felt like, regardless of my misplays, I feel like the deck was probably going to lose that game anyway. He opened Hawkins, I did not, so I mean, pretty big swing there. I did make a couple of misplays where I tried to use an Izo to out his Okiku when I should have just been conserving my own advantage kind of a little bit better. But I could have played a 5 cost on curve, and then I could have protected that from the Okiku attack rather than waste my resources on trying to out an Okiku that wasn't going to get outed. So I would say I did a pretty good job at Treasure Cup. I'm pretty satisfied with my result, but I'm a little mad at myself that I misplayed a little bit more than I would have liked to. I think I definitely had the potential to get top 16. I think this deck's potential probably could have gone even further. So thank you guys for watching my deck profile. This was my report of my Treasure Cup as well as my deck. If you have any other questions as in terms of deck choices, please post your thoughts in the comments. Like I said before, just to summarize, the deck's intention was to be as consistent as possible, play through as many rounds as I could, and keep it relatively simple. The problem with playing mid-range is like a strictly mid-range build is that it takes a lot of effort and thinking. And so I wanted to lean into my strategy on a very control-esque build so that I could keep the strategy simple for myself for a long event. I'm not going to say that this is the most optimal build, but it's possible that I would say that this is on the upper end of some of the most efficient builds for someone to pilot and see great success with. And obviously, getting 21st out of 64, going 7-0, got me this. And hopefully, if you're able to do something similar, then props to you. See you later.